Welcome to IntelliDyne's Masterclass. I'd like to make a few distinguished visitor introductions before we turn to the Commandant. Lieutenant General John Sattler is here, sir. Mr. George Dushak, the Deputy Assistant Command Control, Cyber, Business, and something else I can't read because I didn't really want to put my glasses on, but I guess I have to. The Commissioner for the Commonwealth of Virginia is here. Thank you, sir. Mark Tuitu, the CIO of the Nature Conservancy. Matt Ciccinelli, the President of PAR Government Systems, is here. Sergeant Major Carlton Kent, the 16th Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps, is here. Oh, yeah. Is Dave Spage here? Dave is the principal at Broad Run High School and a former Marine. And Dick Young. Dick, are you here? Dick is a Vietnam Huey pilot. And a retired colonel? Retired colonel, sir? Commander. Oh, he's in the Navy. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't actually mean to talk about him. But. All right. And for our featured speaker, General James T. Conway retired from active duty in 2010 after serving our nation for 40 years. Since then, he has joined and consulted for numerous corporate and nonprofit boards, including Textron Inc, Colt Defense, and General Dynamics. He's also on the board of the Semper Fi Fund. He also co-chairs the Energy Security Leadership Council, a nonpartisan energy policy think tank. Prior to his retirement, General Conway served as the 34th Commandant of the Marine Corps for 4 years. As Commandant, he served as the senior uniformed Marine responsible for the organization, training, equipping of over 250,000 active duty reserve and civilian Marines throughout the United States and overseas, as well as the management of the $30 to $40 billion annual Marine Corps budget. As a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Conway functioned as a military advisor to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and the President. Among his numerous leadership positions, General Conway served as Commanding General of the 1st Marine Division and was the commander of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force during 2 combat tours in Iraq. He initially led the invasion of Iraq in 2003 with 90,000 troops under his command, including Marines, soldiers, sailors, and British forces. General Conway is married to the former Annette Drury of St. Genevieve, Missouri. They have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Hurrah.
Well, thanks, Tony, for that nice introduction. My mother would very much like that introduction. My mother-in-law would still be skeptical, but that's another story. Great to be with you folks tonight. We've had to work on this for a couple of years to make it happen, but Tony, I appreciate your perseverance. And if you folks don't know, this man is absolutely fantastic when it comes to funds and charities and the things that he does on behalf of I would add just a couple of things. I would add just a couple of things to the introduction, and it's really more about the Marine Corps than it is about me. But 2 of my 3 predecessors as a commandant were graduates of the United States Naval Academy. Yeah. I was, however, a graduate of Southeast Missouri State College. And at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And if you've never been there, some of you folks are old enough to remember the movie Deliverance. Just think Deliverance Country when you think Southeast Missouri. If you're ever there, just stay on the main roads and you'll be fine. So, a different two of my three predecessors had either a father or an uncle who were three-star generals in the United States Marine Corps. I had no such distinguished lineage. Now, my dad and several of my uncles fought in World War II, but that was about the extent of it. And as somewhat of a living example of that, when I just made major, my wife and I decided to take our three kids back to Northeast Arkansas to see the family. And we arrived, and my granny, met us on the porch with a big hug. And she said, "Well, are you a sergeant yet?" And I said, "No, Granny, I don't think I'm ever going to be a sergeant." Now, she's always pretty direct, and she said, "Well, I hate it, because I thought if you used to make sergeant, you'd amount to something." I was going to explain to Granny how that all worked, but then my Uncle Bob chimed in, and his comment was, "Well, boy, if the Army ain't going to promote you, they'll let you out." I didn't quite know what to say to that, but that's the same Uncle Bob who professes to have spent 3 days in the United States Army. He said he went to boot camp, and on this big strapping farm boy now, and he went to boot camp on the first day. They gave him a comb, and that afternoon they cut off his hair. On the second day, they gave him a toothbrush, and that afternoon the dentist pulled 5 of his teeth. On the third day, they gave him a jockstrap. And Uncle Bob went over the hill that night and just never did go back. These people is crazy, there'll be none of that. So that's my military heritage in my family. And again, hats off to the Corps that, a farm boy like me could one day become the Commandant. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you folks, and we're here to talk about leadership. And so let's kind of get into it. Since the first day that a caveman looked over his shoulder at his mates in the cave with the fire, picked up his spear, and moved toward the entrance and said, "Ugh," which is caveman for "follow me." People have been sort of captivated by this whole thing of leadership. I mean, regardless of the country, regardless of the era, it's been studied and dissected, and we tried to determine, how does it happen? Is it an art or a science? Are you born or are you made? How about the natural leader as opposed to the assigned leader? And so we tried to answer all those things over the centuries. And what we arrived at, I think, that everybody is in general consensus on, is that there are basically 5 types of leadership. And I'll just name them for you quickly. The first is authoritative, and these terms pretty much speak for themselves, so I won't go into it a lot. But the first style is authoritative. The second is collective, or some people would say democratic. You have a laissez-faire style of leadership. How's my French, Mark? The fourth is narcissistic, and the fifth is caustic. And I will tell you, those of you in the military, I think, would concur that we accept the first 3, we crush those last 2 styles of leadership. And we try to encourage, I think, the democratic or the collective style. But I got to tell you, there are instances where that just won't work. If you are a lieutenant and you just landed with your platoon into a hot LZ, your corporals aren't interested in crawling over and having a discussion about how you should proceed. At that point, you need the authoritative leader to take charge and get something done and take care of his people. So there may be times where you have to sort of figure in and out of those styles. But again, we generally prefer the collective. Now, folks, my experience, as Tony indicated, is 40 years of military leadership. And that's how I'm going to be talking to you folks tonight. But you're going to need to bridge it, okay? You're going to need to draw whatever I have to say to your boots and determine how it applies to you. But I would suggest to you, I think it's a pretty short bridge. Okay, the second thing is, I'm talking fairly senior level leadership. This is not leadership 101. But looking around the room, I see a lot of people fairly long in the tooth, and I think I'm in the right place, okay? So I think you guys will be able to identify with that. And the third thing is, before I get into some of my stories and examples, ladies, I apologize ahead of time. A little bit of colorful language. but my alibi is I'm normally quoting somebody else, okay? So bear with me as we go through what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. I want to get into what I would propose are 10 tweaks to your leadership style. I say tweaks because I'm not going to change your leadership style at this point. I probably don't want to. You're where you are because you know something about leadership, okay? But I would offer you 10 sort of ideas, suggestions, tweaks that you might compare yourself against and just say, okay, how would I fare against a military leader that perhaps had some of these qualities? But in offering those tweaks to you, I'm going to make certain assumptions, okay? One is that you have the mental, moral, physical capacity to lead. That's absolutely essential. And I would say that the only place that might differ a little bit in the civilian world versus the military world is probably the physical. But even then, there may come a time where you have to say, set aside from that computer, lad, let me show you something. And so you have to be proficient in your field and your MOS or whatever it is that you bring to the organization. The mental, the moral, I'm not talking about whether or not you go to church on Sundays. What I'm talking about is the ability to look someone in the eye and say, you know, you're not hacking it. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen men who would charge into fire, who nevertheless have a difficult time sitting down, looking across the table at someone and says, okay, I've given you 2 chances already, you're out of here. It's a special moral courage that it takes to deal with your people, try to make them better, counsel them, give them advice, but if they don't cut it at some point, you've got to cut it. All right, and that takes a certain moral courage that a leader absolutely has to have. You've got to want to lead. I'll tell you a personal experience. When I was a college kid, I worked on the truck docks during the summer before practices would begin, and I worked with this guy who had been the city manager for Belleville, Illinois. But this guy was driving a forklift on the docks with me. Now, a very good forklift driver, okay, but this guy had 3 degrees. And so I grabbed him one night. We were on the evening shift. I grabbed him and said, Joe, you're killing me. I'm trying to get a degree, and you've already got 3 of them. And yet, we both stand here on the truck dock. What is going on? He said, well, lad, it's like this. My wife and I had 2 boys. Those boys were growing up essentially without a dad because I was working 12 hours a day. I'd bring my work home with me and work another 4 hours. And I might not have a chance to say goodnight to my boys. We decided that's not going to happen. We're going to raise this family properly. My wife is a registered nurse. The boys are going to go to school. But in the meantime, I'm here. I'm making good money. I get overtime if I want it. And most importantly, I'm coaching their ball teams. So Joe had made a conscious decision. He did not want to lead. And it's a decision that we all have to make. But if you choose to, understand, it can be a little hard. You know, you may have your favorite team playing on a Sunday afternoon, but you've got to go to the hospital to visit someone who's there. You got to go to a wedding. You got to do something you just soon not be doing. But it is your leadership responsibility to take care of your people and let them know that you care. And the last thing I assume is that if you're going to be a good leader in this organization or any other one, you're also a good follower. Okay, we all work for somebody. The President of the United States works for somebody. And so it's important that you be able to take orders, ask questions if you need to, understand them, and then carry them out. If your people see you wanking about something that's come down from higher authority, guess what you've just done? You've given them authority to do the same thing when you pass something on them that they might not like. So be a good follower, and I think you won't have an issue then being a good leader. Okay, so what are these 10 tweaks? Let me start with the first one, and it is absolutely the number one in terms of priority as well, and that is always just do the right thing. Okay, now what is the right thing? I don't know. It depends on the situation. It's going to be different every time. But you'll know it. You'll sense it. It'll be down in your gut. This is the right thing to do. There may be motivations that would cause you to think otherwise, but folks, just always do the right thing. You want to embarrass yourself. You want to embarrass your company. You want to embarrass your family. And you won't have to look. I don't like negative examples, but I'll start off with one. John and the Sergeant Major and I knew this colonel at Camp Missouri, North Carolina. I'd known him as a captain. He worked for me at a place we call the basic school as a young captain. Hotshot officer, really did well. Had a great combat record, had a battalion in Iraq and did a great job there, promoted to colonel. And he is a commander at this point of what we call a Marine Expeditionary Unit. 2,200 Marines out on the high seas, based forward doing the nation's work on 3 or 4 ships. Well, unfortunately, while this young man was home back at Camp Lejeune, he walked out of a Walmart store with $63 worth of ink in his pocket and was apprehended and was charged and was court-martialed and was eventually booted out of the Marine Corps because of it. His wife was the vice president of the Officers' Wives Club. His daughter was a cheerleader at the local high school. They were just devastated. All for 15 minutes of just terrible judgment. So it's a negative example, but it drives home the point. Just, it may be more expensive, it may take longer, it may be harder, but just do the right thing, and you'll never find yourself truly looking over your shoulder. Okay. The second thing that a leader does is create the environment. Environment, because you're the leader, will be whatever you want it to be. What are your values? What do you think is important? Is it transparency? Is it dedication to the mission? Is it ingenuity and innovation? What is it that you desire to be at work, in the workplace? And you develop a system of rewards and punishments. You reward those who get it and work hard in that environment that you create, and you offer disenfranchisements, let's say, to those that don't do as well. So you sort of crap that environment that you've created as well. But think about it, you got to live it, but your people have to understand it as well. And that gets to the third suggestion, and that is you got to be able to communicate. A leader has to be able to get his or her points across, whatever those may be. And it's not always easy. You know, some people prefer in this day and age to send an email to everybody, okay? Or put it on a bulletin board. Let me tell you, if you put something like that on the bulletin board, you're the only person that's going to read it, okay? So get your people together. Don't use a microphone. Bring them down. Get them in close. Look them eyeball to eyeball and tell them what you think is important. And they'll get it. They'll see when you get excited about something and when you twitch about something, and it'll start to develop that personal relationship that you need with your people. But again, I realize it's not easy. In 1968, the Navy put psychologists and psychiatrists aboard a ship at that point called the USS Oriskany. It was launching airstrikes off Vietnam. And they wanted to test the stress levels on their pilots. And so they put the heart monitors on them, and they found out, of course, when they took the e-ticket ride off that carrier, got jetted off, you know, their heart rate started thumping. And when they got over their targets, which was Haiphong Harbor in this case, their heart rate increased even more. It was even higher, actually, when they came back to land on that carrier at night, pitching in the South China Seas. But do you know when it was absolutely the highest? Do you know when their heart rate was pumping out of their chest? When they had to stand up in the ready room and debrief their mission. Standing in front of their peers and speaking about something they might be criticized for. So I got it that it's tough, but you got to do it, and frankly, the more you do it, the better you'll get, and it'll be one of those things in your rearview mirror, I suspect, in very short order. Okay, the Army has a great term called power down, tweak number 4, all right? It's normally used by the heavy equipment guys, tanks and tracks, and they gear down when they go through an obstacle, so they've got power to burn and a surge if they need it. Marine Corps uses it a little bit differently because we believe in a power down system to our staff NCOs and to our NCOs. We pass down authority, the authority that we may have to them to lead at the fire team level or at the squad level. Now, as we pass down authority, we also pass down what? Accountability. We give you this authority because we think you can do the job. We're going to help you to do the job. But if you don't do the job, you're going to be held accountable for not getting it done. Not that it's negative motivation. It's just the way the environment works. Folks, what we cannot pass down is responsibility. The responsibility remains at the top. The responsibility for what you're doing is yours. And the commander, or I would say the leader, is responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen in the organization. And quite frankly, that's why some people don't do it. There's a little bit of risk there. And some people say, well, I'm going to be authoritarian. I'm going to do it myself. Well, it is not nearly as effective a unit if you try to do it all yourself. And if you delegate that authority, trust your people, school your people, train your people, and in the end, when you When you take leave, if nobody hardly knows or cares, that's a good thing, okay? Because your unit is properly trained to go without you, and frankly, that's not too uncommon a circumstance in combat. Okay, number 5, keep your head down. What do you mean by that? Okay, what I mean is at some point in your careers, and maybe about now, you're going to get the impression, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I can go somewhere in this organization. And your gaze starts to lift to maybe what's next for you, and what can I do that's even more important and better, and obviously better paying. Folks, I encourage you, don't let that happen. A little ambition is a good thing, but don't be so obvious with it. The troops are the first to recognize it, and it's just not a good thing. Keep your head down. Worry about your organization. Make your organization the best one out there. And pretty soon when the charts start to reflect what you're doing, you'll get your notoriety, you'll get your attention, because people are going to say, who's in charge of that outfit? Man, they continually hit it out of the park. Another example, I was the recorder on a brigadier general promotions board when I was a lieutenant colonel. We sat through probably about 2.5 weeks, selected 10 out of 100, actually a total of about 300, but 10 who were primarily in zone. And at the end of the session, the 3-star who was the president of the board and I were preparing the report to go to the Secretary of the Navy, and he said, what do you think of the results of the board? And I said, sir, I thought it was pretty good. You know, you got a great list there. There was one guy that I thought might be on the list. I mean, he's the people that work for him, I think, generally like him. He had a great combat record as a young officer in Vietnam, and he just didn't make it. And this general was a tall, thin guy from Georgia, and he paused for a moment. He looked at me and said, naked ambition has an ugly smell. And that's all he said. But I think I got it. And I just leave you with those thoughts. Again, a little ambition is a good thing. If you overdo it, it's not going to be conducive to in a way that perhaps you might think. Okay, tweak number 6. Don't be a Jekyll and Hyde. Okay, don't have your people wondering what kind of mood is the old guy or the old gal going to be in today. You know, if you have a heated discussion with your spouse at the breakfast table, leave it at the breakfast table. Okay, we call it compartmentalization in the Marine Corps. Compartmentalize your house problems with your house, okay? When you get to work, don't take it out on somebody else. Don't be having somebody wonder, you know, what's it going to be like today. When I was a company commander, I worked for a guy like that. And I remember going into the XO one day and I said, I got to brief the boss on something. He said, not today, you know. Come back tomorrow, you know, we'll see. And that's no fun. That's no fun. So, you know, just try to maintain that consistency as a leader so that your people know where you're going on the issues. Probably the greatest Yankee general who was a guy from Virginia, fought the Confederate armies 10 times and never lost a battle, was named George Thomas. George Thomas said to his staff, I never want the enemy to be able to anticipate me, but I always expect that you will. And that's sort of the relationship I think that you want to have with your people in the workplace. So they know pretty much how you're going to respond to something. There may be changes to that, but by and large, you are somewhat predictable because you're not that moody guy or gal that they have to deal with day in and day out. Okay, number 7. Keep your sense of humor. Okay, there's something funny that goes on in every workplace every day, okay? Enjoy it. Be a part of it. Now, I'm not advocating that you be the village idiot, you know, and you tell jokes that aren't funny, you know. Your people will laugh just because you're the boss, okay? But that's no reason to inflict that on them. So, and I say keep your sense of humor because I suspect you folks didn't get to where you are today without having a good sense of humor, okay? But it's magnificent. I mean, it keeps the place light. It makes it more enjoyable for your workforce to come to work every day. And in some cases, if you're really good, it can disarm a situation. I was a colonel and commanding officer of a place we call the basic school at Quantico. My counterpart, who commanded the officers' candidate school, was a Medal of Honor winner. And one Thursday morning, we're briefing this general. I was done, and it got to his turn, and he told about the school, and he said, "Oh, by the way, General, I'm going up to Harrisburg on Thursday to be the parade. And that's about as far as he got. And the general, who was not prone to do so, just erupted. Damn it, Wes. We gave you that school for a reason. I expect you to command it. Your XO is not there to run the school. You are. And you're gallivanting around the country. And we're all looking down because the general's red-faced and his vein is bulging. And we're thinking, man, this just doesn't happen. But it was. And so finally, the general stopped the tirade. And there was that pause that you might expect following something like that. And this guy looked at him and said, well, sir, does that mean I can't use your car to go up there? We did what you did. We laughed, and happily so did the general. And he said, you incorrigible bastard, take it. I hope you have an accident. And I'll really write you up then for something. But, I can see how this guy won the Medal of Honor. I mean, that was high risk, high gain at that moment, let me tell you. And he pulled it off. So, rest his soul. So keep your sense of humor, guys. And take a risk if you think it's within your domain to win. Family and friends. Point number 8. As you continue to be successful in your organization, really any organization, you've got family that you need to really pay attention to. We say in the Marine Corps, we balance family and service. No, we don't. No, we don't. The Marine Corps is an Iron Maiden. You could care less about your family. Well, maybe priority 6 or 7, all right? So it's up to you to balance it. And if you're going to say that, honestly, try to do so. Now, well, a lot of you I suspect have kids, and they're probably, teens or maybe, late teens. That time is going to fly by, folks. Trust me. And so if you really do sort of enjoy your kids, you got to take advantage of it while you can, because they'll be gone before you know it. And you'll be like me, regretting some of the things that you did, but not able to, of course, ever retrieve that. So really do try to balance family and friends. With regard to the friends, as you become more successful, your friends will be scratching their head more and more about how do they handle this relationship. Okay, it may be distance, it may be uncertainty with regard to your schedule. My thought to you is that monkey's on your back. Okay, you need to dictate what the terms of that friendship are going to be. And if you're willing to let it go, let it go. If you think when you stop working and those friends are going to be important to you, you got to reach out and you got to stay in contact with those people. And when you stay in contact with them, they'll get more and more comfortable and they'll be in contact with you. But just think about it. Again, it's your call completely. But I will tell you, and I think John and again the Sergeant Major would agree, when you get to our point in life, family and friends are pretty doggone important. And the more you have, really the better. So just think about it and realize that if you're not hearing from those folks, just because they're waiting to hear from you, okay, to tell them how this relationship should be governed. Okay, the next point, that officers eat last. Okay, so what's that mean? Well, let me give you a little bit of background. When you're in the field, in a training environment, or you're in combat, you're eating out of little plastic containers. And it's not bad, but it's really a special deal when they bring hot chow to the field. And when they do that in the Marine Corps, and I think in the Army as well, officers eat last. The junior guy, if he's a private that's, fresh out of the brig, still is the first guy in line, okay? And the second guy is the PFC, and the third guy is the Lance Corporal, because our view is these are the people who are doing the most work. They're doing the fighting and the bleeding and potentially the dying. So you are honoring them in some very small symbolic way by saying, no, lad, you get up there and you take all you want. Now, of course, the downside of that is that if you're the last in line, there's always coffee and bread, okay? And I know we've all eaten a lot of coffee and bread, okay? But that's okay because the message is done. So I encourage you in your culture, you don't serve hot chow occasionally, okay? But create the culture, create the belief amongst your junior people that You know, they're all critically important to the organization. They all potentially have something to offer, and are all very important to you as their leader. We also have an expression: if you take care of the troops, they take care of you. I just taken over a battalion, and my very first training exercise with them was out at 29 Palms, California, which is our mountain warfare cold weather training center. And so we're up there, and we're high on the mountain. We finally order hot chow after about day 5, and it comes up. I don't know who made the decision, but they sent us barbecued chicken. And that's kind of hard to eat in heavy gloves, and, you know, there's never enough napkins and that thing. But anyway, the troops loved it. And the Sergeant Major and I, you know, got to the line, and guess what? Bread and so we're standing there sipping the coffee, and one of my big red-headed machine gunners walks over to me and says, "Sir, can I talk to you for just a second?" So, "What do you got, lad?" And he said, "Sir, I'd like to talk to you over there," pointing behind a little fir tree. So we step over there. He reaches in his pocket, his cargo pocket, and pulls out about half a chicken. I mean, no napkin. I can see pocket strings and pocket grip, you know, hanging on this thing. And he said, "Sir, I want you to have this." I said, What is that?" He said, "Sir, I took 2. And I said, "Okay, put it in your pocket before the Sergeant Major sees it. All right, you get some serious trouble. But tell me why you took 2. He said, and he perked up. "So we had a class today, and they told us that if you eat small amounts over an extended period, it'll actually help keep your body warm, because your body is always therefore digesting food." And he said, "And I've got the fire watch tonight from 02 to 04, and I'm gonna try it." I said, Good. I said, "At 02, I'm gonna be deep in my bag, and you need that chicken a whole lot worse than I do, so enjoy it and let me know how it goes." Next morning, I saw him across the formation, and he gave me one of those. So I guess it works. So, folks, that's it. Those are just 10 thoughts for you. Again, you know, you compare, you think about it, you do anything you want to with it. But those things that I've described to you are what we actually require of our military leaders, all services, on a day in and day out basis. So before I hand back the mic, I would like to do 2 things. I'd like to, first of all, honor those who have served in this organization. And I know there's a number of you. If you have served in the United States Army, would you please stand, be recognized by your fellow Americans? United States Navy. United States Air Force. I know we got at least 1, 2, all right. Coast Guard. Sometimes you have 1, not tonight, but I'll tell you what, when I'm bringing my boat in, those boys are going out. So I have the highest regard for our United States Coast Guard. United States Marine Corps. Hoorah. Oh, wow, much of you do. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And the one last thing that I want to do is destroy a myth. Okay, there's a belief out there that when you become a general officer in the United States Marine Corps, that somehow you stop telling jokes on the Navy. Okay, that is just not true. All right, it doesn't happen that way. So I'm going to share a story with you about a gunnery sergeant who retired from active duty. He had always wanted to open a pet store, and so he did. And the gunny's making a good run at it. He's got a successful business going. And one day a young man walks past his store, and he notices in the window there's a sign that says "Talking Dog for Sale." So the guy says, "Oh, come on, I got to see this." So he walks inside. He says, "Hey, Gunny, where's this talking dog that you're advertising?" And the Gunny says, "He's right there." And he looks, and there's this old yellow mongrel-looking dog. If you saw Old Yeller, it looks like Old Yeller, okay? But the guy is gonna play along. And he looks at the dog, and he says, "How did you learn to speak?" And the dog says, "Well, I was with a Marine reconnaissance unit, and they found me to be especially intelligent, and they taught me the language." And this guy, it seems the dog is talking, but he's convinced. There's wires or there's microphones or something. But the dog goes on. He says, "And they would use me and my special talent. They would send me out, and I would find the enemy, listen up to what was going on, come back and report, and we must have killed 100 bad guys like that." And the guy's just shaking his head saying, I think this damn dog is talking to me. But the dog goes on and he says, well, but then I had to leave the Corps, too many deployments, dog ears catching up to me and all of that. So I joined the FBI. And they would use me a lot the same way. I would hang out around internet cafes or hotel lobbies, listen up, come back and report. We must have rolled up 25 spies like that. At this point, the guy, he's convinced, I mean, the dog. And so he turns to the gunny and says, hey, gunny, I got to have this dog. How much is he? And the gunny said, $10. He says, $10, gunny? He's a talking dog. He's a national hero. And the gunny looks at him and says, that's the problem. The dog is such a bullshitter. He said, he didn't do any of that stuff. He was in the Navy. Okay, thanks. All right, thank you, buddy. Thank you. I'll give you that. Thank you. Thanks, folks.
Just a couple of final announcements. The Commandant has graciously agreed to stay for a while. All the Marines in the room, we'd like to get a group picture with him. And then if you'd like to come and chat, just feel free to come up and spend some time with him. I'm sorry, say again? Oh, and also the members of the IntelliDyne Military Resource Group. We'd like to get a picture with you and General as well. And he got here a little late, but I do want to recognize Steve Jordan, who's the Executive Director of the Veterans Employment Initiative for the Northern Virginia Technology Council.
I want that damn dog.
Unfortunately, he was in the Navy. But, Steve got here a little late. Steve is indirectly responsible for a lot of the things that have happened here over the last couple of years, and directly responsible for the hiring of thousands of veterans in the Northern Virginia area. So thank you for being here, Steve. And with that, please enjoy dessert, coffee, and conversation as long as you'd like to stay. We're happy to have you stay here as long as you'd like to. Please feel free to float around and visit anybody who strikes your fancy. And thank you again, General. Thank you again for doing that. It was 2 years in the making, but he's a busy guy. I just want to tell you one story about him that he won't tell about himself. The first time I saw General Conway speak was at the invitation of someone who works for Oshkosh Trucks, a retired Marine CWO4 motor transport officer, and he was speaking at the Marine Corps Transportation Awards, Ground Transportation Awards, with the Sergeant Major. And this Major got up to introduce the Commandant, and there were, I don't know, 500, 600 people in the room. And many of them were government contractors. But the difference between Marines and sort of everybody else is this Major got up and said, I want to introduce our featured speaker. He's the Commandant of the Marine Corps. My wife calls him tall and dreamy, and I just call him sir. Don't ask, don't tell. And the Commandant got up, and the Sergeant Major happened to be traveling with him, and he got up and he said, I love doing this. I love coming to these things. It's really great to see everyone and interact. And he said, but I hate traveling with the Sergeant Major. Maybe let me just sort of step back from there. He said, because wherever I go, everyone says, hey, Sergeant Major, great to see you. Who's that creepy monkey? And so political correctness has not yet come to the United States. I'm kind of proud of that. So thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for the active duty military folks that are here. Thank you for your service. Thank you to our partners and our clients who came. And thank you most of all to the leaders at IntelliDyne who make this company what it is. Thank you all for being here. Have a great night.